This is Retirement Roadmap Radio with Mark Fricks from Master Plan Retirement Consultants. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Retirement Roadmap Radio with your host, Mark Fricks.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome again back to Retirement Roadmap Radio. I'm Mark Fricks, your host for the next 30 minutes or so, and with me, as always, is Mr. Tony Shore as co-host, and we are happy to be here. We have a great topic for today, and it's actually called today The Mountain of Retirement. I have a great story to tell you today, but before we get started, let's bring in Mr. Shore and see how his week has been and his life is going on.
Well, thanks for the intro there, Mark, and it has been going. Last weekend, I went to a family rebellion.
Yes.
Reunion. Sorry. Yeah. But it went well. It was great to see everybody. There were about 38 of us there on my dad's side, and that was fun, seeing all my cousins again. So, yeah, I've had a great week, just been busy with work. How about you? What's going on over there?
Busy. I mean, even though it's summertime, we've got lots of folks looking for help, and hope many of them finding us and getting that kind of help. So it's been busy as always. We've of course we got vacations we're shuffling around and all that kind of good stuff as well. But just love helping people. Just love meeting with people. And every time I meet with somebody new, there's a whole new story. And I just love hearing about people's lives and their dreams and goals for retirement and how they want to get there and their concerns. And then like a detective, we start working through the weave of all that and pulling it all together. And it's just really neat. And again, at least a couple of times a week, I'll have a client just say, we appreciate so much that you guys have taken the stress of retirement off of us. And
sure,
that we know where we're going and how we're going to get there. And it's neat. It's neat to hear that. It's really rewarding.
That is great. That is great. Yeah. And I bet it is. I bet that would be really rewarding. And I know you've helped so many people with that over the years. Now, you said today the show is called The Mountain of Retirement. What does that mean?
Well, it's an illustration I use a lot. In fact, it's in my book, which I talk about in my book as well. And so I think I want to start it off by telling a story that is a true story, by the way. And as the years have passed, a lot of the answers have come out. It starts off with, of course, everyone knows who Sir Edmund Hillary is. He has been crowned with the achievement of reaching the top of Mount Everest and returning and able to tell the story of that. And so he, of course, that's when he became Sir Edmund Hillary. Before that, he was just Ed to his friends, I'm sure.
I'm sure he was just Ed.
Yes, yeah. Or Eddie, maybe even. I don't know. So I wonder if he's any relationship to no, that's Hillary Clinton. That's different. Okay, my mind's drifting. I apologize. So it's very interesting that all those years, again, he was given that I guess you call it notoriety of doing that, and a very brave man. But it's interesting that there's always been speculation about another man, name of Mallory. I think his first name might have been George, if I remember correctly. And there was always speculation that 30 years before he made it to the top, the problem was he did not make it back. And so where was the proof, right?
Right.
Well, very interesting. Back in 1999, there was a lot of snow melt around Everest, and they actually found his body, and they did identify it as him. And there was enough preserved because of the frozen tundra that they could tell it was him. They found stuff on him that belonged to him. But there were some clues, and I don't want to get too technical, but a couple of clues was kind of where the person he was with was, and that he was actually seen on the mountain 2 hours from the summit, so they know he was that close. But then they found something else interesting. They know one of the things that he wanted to do was he wanted to leave a picture of his family at the peak. And so what they did not find on him was that picture. And so, again, there's probably 6 more clues, but it is now pretty much proven that he did make it to the summit. The problem was he didn't make it back, as I said earlier. So, what does that deserve? I certainly think it deserves recognition. But this is the other interesting part I think. Sir Edmund Hillary took with him a Sherpa. A Sherpa, of course, is someone that lives in that area, that is knows the mountain. They guide. They're a guide to the top and back down. They know the best routes. They can read the weather, all of this type of stuff. And so they are experts at going up the mountain, but also down the mountain back home, which is nice to get back home, right? The thing with Mallory is he actually took his friend Irvin. So he did not have an expert. He had a friend go with him. And so I was reading up on this, and it actually is that 70% of all climbing accidents and deaths occur on the way down back. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why. You're tired, you're running low on food or oxygen, or lots of different reasons you can say that. But I want to relate that back to retirement, and so when you start thinking about retirement, if you look at the mountain of retirement, going up the mountain, approaching retirement before you reach that peak, it's really not that complicated. I mean, it's not like you've got a dozen decisions to make, right? I mean, what's a decision to make? Do I put money in my 401k at work? Well, that's a pretty simple decision, right? Hopefully you do. Hopefully they're matching. Do I need a little, some life insurance in case I pass away to make sure my family's taken care of? Do I need some disability insurance? I mean, there's 4 or 5 questions you may have, but you've got time on your side, and so it's not that difficult, right? But once you reach that peak, and then you start heading toward the valley of retirement, and you want to get back, into retirement, through retirement, to the end of your life, what do we have to think about? What are the decisions that have to be made? The first thing that comes to my mind is working on things like, your goals. What will you be doing, when you retire? Are you going to be playing golf? Are you going to be traveling? Are you going to buy an RV? Are you going to write a book? Are you going back to school? I mean, there's all these different things. And, is that complicated? No. Do you need a Sherpa for that? Probably not. But then you start thinking about what's the cost of this lifestyle and what kind of a budget. And I guess probably every time I do an initial consultation, the hardest thing for the client or prospect to come up with is how much money they're going to need in retirement. So we kind of work through that. What are you doing now? What will you be doing differently? What are you spending now? What are you actually spending, right? Not your paycheck, not your salary, because you're got things coming out of that won't come out in retirement, like 401ks and things like that. So we spend a lot of time talking about that, and we even have some budget worksheets we can use and things like that. So that's probably the first big thing that we have to think about and come up with a number.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that is one of the first things you have to do, and I know that's where a financial services professional like yourself comes in, Mark, and I think that it's really important for people to understand they don't have to go it alone, and that's why you need a Sherpa. That's why when your car starts making a funny sound, I call a mechanic. If my kid flushes a toy down the toilet, I call a plumber, right? When it comes to my finances, I work with a financial services professional. I'm not going to name names, Mark Fricks, but I happen to know a guy. And people out there just really need to understand that they need, especially now with all the changes. There's constant tax changes, constant changes to Social Security, Medicare. And so you're there to be that financial Sherpa. And you're right. I love the analogy. A lot of people have made it to the top of Mount Everest now. People have done it, but not as many make it back down. And that's right. The key is the trip back down. So
yeah, it'd be nice to be get back home. That'd be sure.
That would be a good goal. A lot of people go with just the goal in mind to reach the top. But right. You have to plan in advance and even do more planning to get back down. So without a plan, you probably won't make it. Or there's a good chance you won't. So that's not good. And that's the same with our retirement. You have to have a plan. And really, a lot of people have a great plan to get there, get to retirement, work, save, But or hey, I'm working, I've got a 401k, I'll worry about retirement later. But you really do need to get some ducks in a row first, don't you?
Yeah, and if you relate it back again to Mallory and him making it but not making it back. I mean, it's occasionally I'll have somebody come in and they really like what we do and they love, the planning part because they've never had that before. They've had someone that maybe invested some money for them, but if they ever asked them a tax question, they're like, oh, we don't do that. Or a Social Security question, we really don't do that. We just invest your money. I had somebody recently, and this happens, I wouldn't say all the time, but happens occasionally when I'll have somebody come in and say, well, I'm working with a company who, they've worked with us for 2 generations or 3 generations. My granddaddy used this company and this guy, then this guy passed on to his son, and I'm using that guy's son, and so forth and so on. And so they've really become close to us and they're good friends. And I said, well, okay, that's good. That's really good. Again, are they retirement consultants or are they investment advisors? And they'll say, well, I don't think that they do all what you do. And then I start asking questions. And again, it's that, okay, we've reached the top. It wasn't, again, could a friend get you to the top or close to retirement? Yeah, maybe so. Again, there's 3 or 4 decisions to make. But then that's when which is why once you turn about 50, age 50 to 55 or so, you need to start thinking about getting a financial Sherpa that can take you through all the other things, there are, to decide about. And, we've already talked about that first thing, coming up with how much money do we need. And that may sound simple and some people just come up with a number immediately. It may be a little bit off, but that's okay. But then what else do we need to do? Well, we need to start, the next thing is start looking at the money picture. And the money picture being, how do we replace your paycheck? I've read several articles just in the last few days because I'm updating some of our materials. And there's a great disagreement about, how much can you take out of a stock market account over retirement and not run out of money. And there's no way to track that because you've got so many variables. You've got the volatility of the market is much worse over the last 20 years than it was the preceding 60 years. You've got longer lives. Now it's not 10 to 15, now it's 20 to 30 years that money's got to last. You've got what's called the risk of sequence of returns, which basically means if you retire and that first year we have a bear market, you've dug yourself a hole that you're probably not going to come out of. And so how do you replace that paycheck? Pensions have gone away, right? Very few pensions left. And even the ones that are around, a lot of them don't have cost of living increases. So now you got inflation to battle. Social Security, it changes. We've had 12 major changes in Social Security since it's been around in the late 30s. And so it's going to change again. What's it going to look like? Do we have a plan for that? And so when it comes to income, is probably the next most important question. Now we know what we need, how we're going to get it, and how we're going to bridge that income gap. And again, every once in a while I'll have somebody come in with this big spreadsheet. Okay, Mark, I got to figure it out. And I look at it and okay, well, you left this out. Oh, you left that out too. Oh, by the way, maybe the market's averaged 8% for 80 years, but it's not 8% every year. One year it's 12 and one year it's a negative 15, and how do you take that into consideration, and all these kinds of things that just having a spreadsheet doesn't solve. And so that's the next most important thing is income. Where's that paycheck coming from? I've told this many times on this show. Never forget, several years ago, one of my clients retired and he said, Mark, I've never walked away from a paycheck. It scares me to death. And so we had to replace that paycheck monthly because there's something funny about the utility company. They want their check every month or they're going to cut that baby off. And so if you don't have that check ready, you're going to be in the dark for a few days. So that's the next most important thing on that as you begin that journey down the mountain toward the final retirement.
Right, and that's huge. So if our listeners want to get that plan in place, I know that you offer that no-charge consultation, and you'll sit down with them and get a plan for them. How do they do that?
Well, a couple of simple ways. Number one, of course, the old-fashioned phone call works. We still have telephones here in the office, which is really nice. 770-980-9262. But I think a really simple way is just to go to our website, and there's a little button right there on the front page, schedule. I can't schedule now. Maybe is what it says. I'm not sure. You push that button though, or what do you call it when you're on a computer? You don't really push a button. You click on the icon. Maybe
Yes,
that's what it is.
there you go.
You can tell I'm old. So you push the button, right, and my calendar pops up. So you can actually choose from any openings I have on my calendar, even a Saturday here and there, a couple of evenings a week. I'll stay late, and typically the first appointment is a Zoom web appointment. If you want to do a phone call, that's fine, or face-to-face. We got people, we're now meeting face-to-face. We've all been vaccinated, and we have a great conference room that's large and airy and ventilated and has a very powerful air machine and all this kind of stuff. So we're very comfortable face-to-face too. But again, you click that button, somebody will follow up with you. You've captured that time with me, and now it's just a matter of us getting the materials to you to prepare for that meeting. And really, Tony, it's just a 30 to 45-minute chat about your dreams, your goals, your concerns, and if it's a situation to where after the conversation that we think we can run some of the reports for you. We'll run anywhere from 5 to 10 reports to show you where you're at, where you're going, and where the pitfalls are. And so that's complimentary as well. So there's 2 times with me that we can work and look at your situation and just kind of see where you're at and see what planning might do for you.
Wow. Well, I think that's fantastic. So, great topic today. Obviously, we're climbing that mountain, but we're all working toward retirement, which happens when you get down from that work mountain, and making it down successfully so you can have a long and happy retirement is the name of the game here. And it starts with figuring out risk tolerance. You mentioned, one of the first things you have to figure out is, how much money you're going to need to make it down that mountain. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next thing you have to think about is, okay, I've got my income plan put together now.
Yep.
What about the other money I'm going to need? Because it's one thing to have a check every month, but guess what? Things happen. The roof blows off. I want to go to Europe. There's all these things that come up that aren't part of our...
The AC goes out on the hottest day of the year, right?
Of course, always. And so, these are things that aren't necessarily part of our income, so we need some backup buckets. And so we may have 2 or 3 backup buckets. One's a short term, one's a mid-term, one's a long term, maybe for health care in the later years. And these are buckets that will grow as we're taking our income from the income bucket. These accounts are growing, and we, whether we need it once a year or twice a year or once every 5 years or whatever, we are taking advantage of the stock market in these accounts, and that will give us that backup money we need to enjoy our retirement and to take the stress off in case, again, something happens. And it's always going to happen. There's always something that's going to come up. And so that's kind of the next thing. So what asset classes do we use for that? And we get pretty technical. We're very well diversified. And when I say that, I don't mean stocks and bonds. I mean stocks and bonds and precious metals and some accounts that are actively managed, and some of them are ETFs, some are actual individual stocks, and we make sure we want to use different asset classes that work differently. So if one's down, the other one's up. And so we're always very careful about that. And so that's kind of the next thing after income is that backup money, that fund money, that what if money that's over here growing in 2 or 3 buckets for our future.
Right. And so basically you're talking about asset allocation and where your money's at and being able to access it when you need it. So everything from those retirement funds, how do you turn them into income, and having that emergency fund and filling the income gap. That's a big part of that, isn't it? There's always a gap between, let's say you have a 401k, an IRA, or maybe even, in Social Security, and that adds up to a certain amount, but then there's a gap between that and what you need to live on comfortably, right?
Exactly, and that's part of that income planning that's so important. And then the other thing that again, you can ask the average advisor or broker or financial salesperson out there this question, and they'll typically glass over, and it's about tax planning, because that income that's coming in, what's the net? It's not the gross that counts, it's the net. So if it's taxable, then, subtract 20 or 30% of that check that's coming in, unless you've got a tax strategy where you're turning some of your money into tax-free money. We believe very strongly that, taxes are going to be rising in the future. I could go through about 12 reasons. Let's just say they're going to go up. And so about the time you're ready to retire, 90% of your money's in a 401k, which means you have a mortgage on your 401k. Part of that money does not belong to you. It belongs to the IRS. It's just a matter of when they get it, and they're going to get it when you take money out. And so tax planning is probably the next most important thing, because it's not about the gross, it's about the net check coming in each month.
Well, yeah, there you go. It is always about the next check, and so that's an interesting take. And I know that's something you help your clients figure out, is that income planning piece. That's the main thing you do for folks. And our listeners should probably pick up the phone, give you a call, and make sure they have a plan in place for that, because, wow, retirement income planning is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's much more complicated than you think. And again, once you start looking at the tax part of it, it changes the whole picture. And that's why really tax planning has moved up to probably the second or third most important thing we do now. For a while, it was 5 or 6 places down in importance. Now it's really moving up fast. And we are really taking a lot of time to put together a tax strategy, especially since taxes are on sale right now. They still are one of the lowest that they've been in many, many years. And so we're trying to take advantage of that before they do go up. So, that tax planning, making it part of that income planning is critical. And then we move into, some other areas. We move into Social Security planning. How do we maximize that? Because the more that can be, then the less gap we have. We look at pension maximization. If you are blessed enough to have a pension, how can we maximize that? Do you choose a survivor, or do you cover the survivor in a different way? And then, I know we're running out of time, so I'm just kind of running through some of the other decisions. Medicare, Medicare supplements. You look at long-term care. I mean, you're going to have that problem in the future. How do you handle that? That could be $200,000 or $300,000 over a 4 or 5 year period. And if you're married and your spouse has that problem, then they die, you not only have drained part of your assets, but now you've lost some of your income. So long-term care planning and premature death of a spouse are 2 more things that kind of walk hand in hand. And then we start looking at legacy. I mean, how important is that to folks? I mean, do you really want to leave something to kids and grandkids? Do you want to help fund, that grandchild's college? Some people come in, I think I mentioned this on a show recently, and say, if there's something left, they can have it. Otherwise, it's mine. And that's fine. I mean, you've earned it and all that kind of good stuff. Other people are like, my parents left me something. I'd like to leave that legacy to my kids. And so we want the legacy planning, which includes, again, maximizing legacy includes how do we reduce taxes at a passing of a spouse, and how do we reduce the complications of probate. So that's part of the legacy planning. So it's I'm just touching on the big ones here. By the way, there's a lot of, I think there are 15 risks in retirement that could throw you off. So I'm just touching on the top 5 or 6 today because of our time constraints, but we look at all of them, and because we don't know what could do it. We don't know what could trip you up and make your retirement less than what you hoped it would be and more stressful. That's just no way to retire. You don't want to retire into stress. The reason you retire is to get rid of stress, and so that's what our job is. We are stress relievers. Maybe that's what we should be called, the stress relievers. That's where we need some music.
I love it. The stress relievers. Yeah, that's awesome. That's
maybe
awesome.
Need some Superman music there, or Batman music or something.
Well, yeah. We'll fix that in post. Yeah. But seriously, that's awesome, and that's a big part of it. So it's really the SWAN plan, SWAN, sleep well at night, right?
Yeah,
you want to be able to sleep well at night, not have to worry about, oh my goodness, the market fluctuations or inflation and the economy, market volatility, because you have a solid plan in place. And speaking of that, we're almost out of time. So let our listeners know, Mark, before we go, how they can get a hold of you.
Well, again, a great way is the website, masterplanretire.com. Lots of resources. You can schedule your appointment there, find out more about us. We have calculators. We have podcast. Every radio show we've done is available on podcast. There's over 100, and I don't know how many there are now, Tony. I've not counted lately. Those are also all available on all the major podcast apps on your phone. So you probably have my podcast in your pocket as we speak. So lots of information, but most importantly, that allows you to schedule the appointment. So masterplanretire.com, or again, give us a call at 770-980-9262. If you're listening to the show over the weekend, just leave a message. We'll be back in touch with you Monday, get something on the calendar for you, or just answer some questions for you. Maybe you just need 5 minutes of time, and that's fine too. If I can help you, I would love to. That's what I do. That's why I do this, is to try to help folks.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of The Road to Retirement with our host, Mark Fricks.
And I hope you enjoyed today's show, The Mountain of Retirement. Hope you got a lot out of it. And again, hope to hear from you. But in the meantime, until we see each other again, plan well and prosper. Have a great day, everybody.